Leadership isn't theory. It's what happens when people are counting on you and things start going wrong. I'm Joe Thomas, professional engineer, contractor, and Air Force Reserve Lieutenant Colonel. I've led troops in combat, trained hundreds of officers, commanded over 200 airmen in my squadron, and built an engineering firm from the ground up. This channel is where I break down what real leadership looks like and how to actually do it. I want to tell you about a time I walked into our main office and I saw a folded up ping pong table in the back of the conference room. And I asked one of the guys that works there every day, hey, what's that all about? Does anybody actually use it? And he was like, I think somebody used it once, but maybe right after we got it, but no, we don't. Why did they put it in there? And he said, I think it's just to help morale, maybe make everybody feel more comfortable about being at work. And I said, well, why doesn't anybody use it? He said, well, we're all too busy. We don't have time to play ping pong at work. That ping pong table cost somebody a couple $100, and it told the entire team everything they needed to know about their culture. Just not the way that the management intended it to. So here's the thing. 94% of executives say culture directly impacts their business outcomes. But walk into most engineering firms and what do you find? Perks, policies, posters on the wall with company values written in crazy fonts, and engineers who are quietly checking out. Today I want to talk about why, and more importantly, what actually builds culture. Let's start with what culture actually is, because I think most firms have gotten this fundamentally wrong. Culture is not your office design, it's not your stated values, it's not your benefits package or your Flex Friday policy. Culture is the lived daily experience of every person on your team. It's the answer to questions like, do I feel safe raising a problem to my manager? Does the work I do here actually matter? Is there a path forward for me, or am I just filling a seat? And here's the critical insight that most leadership conversations completely miss. Culture is not built in the all-hands meeting. It's not built in the annual engagement survey. It's built in the 10-minute conversations your manager has with you on a Tuesday afternoon. Every single one of those daily interactions either builds culture or erodes it, brick by brick, day by day. Now, here's where engineering organizations have a particular vulnerability, and it's one I've seen play out over and over again in this industry. We take our best engineers, the ones who are technically excellent, who work hard, who deliver results, and we promote them into managerial roles. And then we hand them a team, wish them luck, and move on. No training, no framework, no support structure, just you're manager now, figure it out. And then when they struggle, when their team starts disengaging, when the good people start leaving, we blame the market or the economy or the younger generation. We don't look at the one thing we can actually control. The research on this is about as clear as it gets. Gallup has been studying employee engagement for decades. Across millions of workers in hundreds of industries in dozens of countries, they're finding 70% of the variance in team engagement traces directly back to the manager. Not the CEO, not the company's mission statement, not the benefits package, the direct manager. Let me say that one more time because I think it's worth letting sink in. 70% of whether your team is engaged or checked out right now, today, is determined by how their manager leads them. And the cost of getting this wrong is staggering. Gallup's 2025 report estimates that disengaged workers cost the global economy $438 billion in lost productivity in 2024 alone. That's not a rounding error. That's roughly the GDP of a mid-sized country, evaporated because people showed up to work and didn't bring their best. Now, zoom into your firm, to your team, to the engineer who is technically present but mentally somewhere else. That's not an HR problem. That's not a compensation problem. That's a leadership problem. And here's what makes this especially urgent right now. In 2024, global manager engagement fell to its lowest record level, 27%. Only about 1 in 4 managers is genuinely engaged in their own work. Think about that. Think about the ripple effect. If your managers aren't engaged, their teams aren't engaged, and their teams are the ones delivering your projects, serving your clients, and building your reputation. The culture problem starts at the manager level, and so does the solution. One more number before we move on. Gallup also found that only 44% of managers globally have received any formal management training. Less than half. We're asking people to build culture with no blueprint, lead teams with no training, and develop people with no framework. And then we're surprised when the ping pong table collects dust. So let's talk about what actually works and what doesn't. Because I want to be fair here. I'm not saying perks are worthless. I'm saying they're insufficient. There's a big difference. Let's run through the scorecard. Ping pong table. Average cost, a few hundred to a couple $1,000s. Culture impact, minimal. Retention impact, basically zero. Engagement impact, temporary if anything. Open office redesign. Average cost, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Culture impact, low. Research actually shows that many open office configurations increase stress and reduce collaboration rather than improving it. Free snacks and beer. Ongoing costs, several thousands of dollars a year. Culture impact, minimal. Retention impact, zero. In a company where there haven't been any raises, a cheap gesture in place of something that would actually matter seems like a slap in the face. Now let's look on the other end of the spectrum. Flexible schedules. Cost, almost nothing. Culture impact, moderate. Retention impact, meaningful. People value autonomy. When you give it, they notice. Recognition. Genuinely acknowledging someone's work, specifically in the moment. Cost, nothing. Engagement impact. Research from O.C. Tanner shows the leaders who recognize small wins consistently see an 83% increase in team engagement. 83% from saying, I saw what you did on that project, good job. And then the top of the list, leadership development. Formal investment in training the people who lead your teams. The research is unambiguous here. Gallup found that teaching managers effective coaching techniques boosts team performance by 20 to 28%. Manager well-being increases by 32% with ongoing development support. And when managers receive role-specific training, their engagement rates jump from 28% to 50%. That's not a marginal improvement, that's transformation. Here's the economics of it that I find most compelling. We already know that losing one engineer costs a firm somewhere between 1 and 2 times their annual salary, when you account for recruiting, lost productivity, onboarding, and all the other hidden costs. For a senior engineer at $110,000, that's over $200,000 out the door. A leadership development program costs a fraction of that. Not a quarter of that, not half of that, a fraction. So the question isn't whether you can afford to invest in leadership development. The question is, can you afford not to? I want to step back from the data for a minute and talk about something more fundamental. How does culture actually form? Because I think if you understand the mechanism, the actual chain of cause and effect, it changes how you think about your role as a leader. Culture isn't built in a retreat. It isn't built at a values workshop. It's built through a chain of events that happens every single day in every team across every organization. It starts with leader behavior. How does the manager respond when something goes wrong? Did they create psychological safety or did they shoot the messenger? Did they give credit or take it? Do they advocate for their people or protect themselves? Those behaviors create a team experience. The people on the team feel something, safe or guarded, valued or invisible, growing or stuck. And that experience drives engagement. The extra 10% that separates good work from great work is almost entirely determined by that experience. Behaviors and experiences repeat over time, they become norms. That's how we do things here. That's the culture. I'll give you an example from my own experience. When I was a young platoon leader, we had a very fun platoon sergeant. He was always joking around, and we all had a good time. We laughed. We enjoyed going to work. We all worked together really well. There was a sense of camaraderie. We were all in it together, and there was a strong sense of that when the platoon sergeant was there and he was engaged with the troops. He was the first one to give somebody a hard time or make fun of them, but he was also the first one to pick them back up, pat them on the back, and recognize them openly. So it wasn't so much about him just being a super nice guy. He genuinely cared for his soldiers, and it was obvious, and everybody saw it. And then he left, because that's what happens in the Army, is you have people rotate out. And then we got a new platoon sergeant in who was much less experienced and had come up in the mentality of, I need to be the hardest guy in the room. I need to be the rule establisher. I need to be the hammer. And after about 2 months, we had a complete degradation in unit morale. We had people not showing up for work. We had people showing up late to formations. I mean, I had to bust people down for insubordination. And at the end of it, I had to pull the platoon sergeant aside and we had to discuss his mentality and the way he was treating the soldiers. And it wasn't just me that noticed it. It was the company commander, it was the first sergeant, it was the sergeant major, it was the battalion commander. I mean, 3 levels above us had recognized how we had gone from a very cohesive unit to a very disjointed one. And that wasn't even replacing both of the leaders. It was replacing one of them. But he had such a strong influence that by removing him from the situation, it had created a very negative issue. We were able to turn it around. The young sergeant realized what he was doing and became an excellent senior NCO. We brought the platoon back together and everything worked out great. But it was a very poignant moment for me as a very young leader to see how one person can have a huge effect on a group of 35 other individuals. So the reason I tell you that story is not to say that I did anything particularly wrong or right in the circumstances. It's to illustrate the fact that one person can greatly affect the culture of an organization. And it's just an accumulation of things. It wasn't day one. He didn't walk in the door and everybody was like, peace, I'm out. That's not how that happened. It was every single day it got worse and worse and worse and worse until we couldn't stand it any longer and we had to make a direct adjustment. Well, that's how culture is developed. It's developed over time. It can be relatively quickly, like it was in my case, or it can take years and years and years, depending on their exposure. But what I want you to understand is that it usually accumulates behind the scenes before you realize it if you're in that leadership position, is that you can have things simmer under the surface for a long time before they blow over. Now, none of those things are in your company vision. None of those things are in your policies or in your written corporate documentation to address. These are things that you as the leader need to be paying attention to. You as the leader are responsible for it. These are those soft skills of leadership that if you're not watching, if you're not paying close attention, you will miss. And all of a sudden you'll have half your team walk out the door because they're tired of one person. Trust me, it's happened to me. So that brings me to the question that I ask every engineering manager I talk to. What does your team's daily experience actually feel like? Not what you intend it to feel like, not what you hope it feels like, but what does it actually feel like? For most leaders who haven't had any formal training, the honest answer is, I don't really know. And that's not a character flaw. That's a training gap. All right, so what does good actually look like? What do trained leaders do differently that builds culture instead of eroding it? I want to give you 5 concrete behaviors, not principles, not platitudes, things you can start doing tomorrow. Number 1, know your people as people, not just producers. That sounds obvious, but it isn't practiced nearly enough. Research from O.C. Tanner found that only 54% of employees say their leader actually knows what they do day to day. Not even what motivates them, just what do they do? The fix is simple. Regular one-on-ones where you ask about more than project status. What's challenging them? What do they want to build toward? What's getting in their way that you could actually remove? When people feel known, they stay. When they feel like a resource, they leave. Number 2, give specific, timely recognition. Not good job on the project, that's just noise. Hey, I noticed how you handled the pushback from the client on Thursday. The way you explained the structural load constraints without losing them, that was exactly the right approach. That's recognition that tells someone their work matters and that you're paying attention. 83% engagement increase free today. Number 3, make the path forward visible. The number 1 driver of voluntary turnover among engineers is career development or lack thereof. People don't just want a job, they want to know where they're going. A trained leader makes this explicit. They sit down with each person and say, here's what I see in you. Here's what I think you're ready for. And here's where we're going to go together to get you there. That conversation costs you 30 minutes. It earns you years of retention. Number 4, give autonomy before it's demanded. High-performing engineers are problem solvers. They don't want to be told exactly how to do their job. They want to be trusted to figure it out. Micromanagement is one of the fastest ways to kill culture. Research shows that empowering teams to take ownership creates an 88% increase in the sense of opportunity at the organization. Now, that's not to say you let people just run wild and do anything that they please, but you have to recognize who's ready for that and provide them the autonomy that they deserve. The leader's job isn't to have all the answers, it's to set clear outcomes and then get out of the way. Number 5, model what you want to see. Culture is contagious and it spreads fast from the top down. If you want a culture of honesty, be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. If you want a culture of accountability, hold yourself accountable publicly when you miss. If you want a culture of growth, talk openly about what you're working on learning right now. People don't do what leaders say, they do what leaders do. These 5 behaviors won't fix a broken culture overnight, but done consistently, they create what no perk ever has, a team that actually wants to be there. I want to zoom out one more time and talk about what's actually at stake here, because this conversation often gets siloed as a people and culture topic, as if it's separate from the financial performance of the business. Culture is strategy, and the numbers prove it. Organizations with strong, engaged cultures see up to 85% higher revenue growth than competitors with weak or toxic cultures. They report 18% higher productivity. Their best people stay longer. Their clients notice the difference. 54% of employees who leave organizations in healthy cultures cite a poor manager or unfair treatment as the reason. Not pay, not benefits, not remote work. Every engineer who walks out that door because of leadership they couldn't work under costs you over $200,000 by the time you've replaced them. And that's before you calculate what they took with them. The project knowledge, the client relationships, the institutional memory. Now multiply that by the size of your team, by the number of managers in your firm who have never received formal leadership training. This isn't a soft problem. This is a hard dollars problem. Here's what I keep coming back to when I talk to engineer leaders across the industry. The firms that are winning the talent war aren't winning on salary alone. They're not winning because of the view from the office or the number of PTO days. They're winning because their managers actually know how to lead. Because when a great engineer gets a call from a recruiter offering them more money, which will happen, and it happens a lot, what keeps them from taking that call is not their compensation package, it's their manager. It's the fact that someone in this organization knows them, invests in them, and gives them a reason to stay. That's culture, and it's built one leader at a time. So, here's what I'll leave you with. If you're an engineering leader, whether you manage 3 people or 30, and this video resonated with you at all, I want to offer you something special. We built a free team assessment at Command Engineering. It's 10 questions, takes about 5 minutes, and it's designed to help you identify exactly where your team's most urgent need is right now. Not in general, not theoretically, right now. Is there a gap in communication, in trust, in growth and development, in accountability? The assessment tells you, and then it gives you a starting point, something concrete you can act on this week. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments for free.